I always consider myself lucky. My family was what every man dreams of: a beautiful wife, a smart son, and a stable life. My name is Alex, and my life could seem perfect. I worked in a large company in a management position. I earned enough so that my family would never need anything. Sophia was a woman I chose consciously. We met at university, and I knew that she was smart, reliable, faithful. I proposed to her after 3 years of dating, and we lived together for 12 years of marriage. Our son, Evan, became everything to me. I grew up without a father. My father left the family when I was 5 years old. My mother raised me alone, and I saw how difficult it was for her. I made a promise to myself: when I have a family, I will be a different father. I will not abandon my child. I will not cheat on my wife. I will become the man I would have liked to have had as a child. I worked to provide for my wife and son. I always spent time with them. We went on vacation, celebrated all the important dates. I never thought that my family was a lie, but it turned out that I was just a perfect fool who did not see the truth, and the truth turned out to be worse than I could have imagined. My wife was always perfect, or at least that's what I thought. She was a good mother, a caring wife, and always pretended to appreciate me. But now that I think about it, I realize that the signs of her lying were everywhere. I just didn't want to see them. The first changes in Sophia's behavior. About a year ago, Sophia started to change. At first, it was little things that I didn't notice. She started taking better care of herself. Yes, she always looked good, but she didn't care about it that much before. Suddenly, she started taking longer in the bathroom, choosing more revealing clothes, wearing perfumes that I didn't buy. She started to initiate intimacy less often. I could have chalked it up to fatigue or stress. I didn't want to think that something was wrong. She started spending more time on her phone. I remember her sitting on the couch one evening, smiling at her screen. I asked, "What's so funny?" She'd say, "I'm just talking to a friend." And I believed her. I believed every word she said. I didn't check her phone. I didn't ask any questions. I didn't want to be the man who looked for infidelity where there wasn't any. I was a complete fool. She started coming home later. Sophia used to always come home at the same time. She worked for a marketing company, and her schedule was predictable. But then she started coming home later. "We have a client meeting today," she'd say. "We need to stay for a few more hours." I believe her again, even when it started happening 3 or 4 times a week. "We have an important project," she would say. Sometimes I would joke, "But you work harder than me there." She would smile, kiss me, and say, "Well, someone has to earn money." I didn't know that she was just playing a role. She knew how to lie perfectly. The first doubts that I ignored. One evening I came home earlier than usual. I bought Sophia's favorite wine and wanted to surprise her, but she wasn't home. I called her. "Honey, I'm still in the office. We just finished a meeting." I smiled. "I got it. I bought you wine. Come quickly." "Oh, thank you. Wait for me." I hung up the phone and decided to check one thing, to see her location. She was disconnected. I felt a strange cold prick in my chest. I pushed the feeling away, but it didn't go away. She started avoiding my father. Sophia used to get along well with my father. They weren't very close, but he would come over to visit us sometimes. But over the past year, her attitude had changed. She stopped sitting at the same table with us when he came over. She always found an excuse to leave the house when he was visiting. She started to get annoyed when I mentioned him. "Sophia, what's wrong?" I asked one day. "I just don't like his company." I took it for granted. Some people just don't get along. But then I learned the truth. And that truth hit me like a train. A conclusion I made too late. Now that I look back, her every move, every change in behavior was obvious. But I didn't want to see the truth. I thought I had the perfect wife. But it turned out she was a perfect liar. And soon I would learn the worst discovery of my life. But I wouldn't let her win. I would make her regret ever betraying me. I always thought that betrayal was something far from me, that it happened to someone else, but not in my life. I didn't suspect anything until a random phone call changed everything. The forgotten phone. It was a normal morning. I got ready for work, gave Sophia a quick kiss on the cheek, and left the house. But a few minutes after I left, I remembered that I had forgotten important documents. I turned the car around and drove home. The door was unlocked. I went into the hallway and was about to go up to the office when I saw her phone. She had left it on the kitchen table. It was strange. Sophia never forgot her phone, but I didn't pay attention to it. I just took my documents and was about to leave when suddenly the phone rang. Whose number was this? The contact's name flashed on the screen. Uncle Rick. I froze. I knew the number. I had signed my father that way myself when I was a child, but I knew for sure that Sophia had never called him that. To her, he was simply Richard or your father. Then why was his number saved in her phone under that name? Something inside me snapped. It didn't sound like a normal call from a relative. This was a call that shouldn't have fallen into the wrong hands. What should I do? I stood in silence. The phone kept ringing. I could have just answered, just picked up the phone and heard what he had to say. But I didn't. Fear stopped me. The fear of hearing something I wasn't ready to hear. The phone vibrated again and the ringer went off. And then the message came. The message that broke my peace. I could have just not read it. Just put the phone down and left. But I couldn't. I looked at the screen and read, "Sonny, where are you? I miss you. Yesterday was incredible." My heart sank. I reread those words again. "Sonny, where are you? I miss you. Yesterday was incredible." It wasn't my father, who was just calling his daughter-in-law. It was a man waiting for her. The man she was with yesterday. I still didn't believe it. I tried to find a logical explanation. Maybe this is a mistake. Maybe someone just signed up for her. Maybe it's not what I think it is. I couldn't believe it. It was too wild. But my body felt the truth faster than my brain. I felt my hands shaking, my heart pounding in my chest. My whole world suddenly shook. What should I do? I quickly put the phone back. I took a deep breath. Sophia must not know that I suspected something. I left the house and got into the car. I had to find answers. And I had to find them as quickly as possible. Because if I'm right, my wife is cheating on me with my own father. And if it's true, there will be no mercy for either of them. I want to say I had forgotten about that call, that it had been a mistake, that I had simply misunderstood something. But my brain wouldn't let go of the thought. What if it was all true? What if my wife was sleeping with my father? The thought was so disgusting that I felt sick to my stomach. I tried not to think about it. I tried to distract myself. But subconsciously, I had already started looking for evidence. I began to notice strange things. The next morning when I left for work, Sophia was smiling like always. She kissed me on the cheek and said, "Have a nice day, honey." And there was not a drop of guilt in her voice. I thought that if she was really cheating on me, I would feel it. But no, she acted as if nothing had happened. If I hadn't seen that message, I would never have suspected her. And that scared me even more, because it meant she had been lying to me for a long time. Checking her phone. That day I couldn't work. My thoughts were stuck in one place. When I got home, Sophia was in the shower. Her phone was on the nightstand. I had never checked her phone before. I considered it a betrayal of trust. But now I had to know the truth. I picked up the phone. And immediately I saw one strange thing. All the messages had been deleted. Absolutely all of them. She was hiding something. Maybe it was a coincidence? But then I checked something else. No call from Uncle Rick. No messages. As if they had never been there. But I knew for sure that they were there. She erased them. Now I had no doubt. Sophia was hiding something. And I had to find out what it was. I remembered another detail. I sat on the bed, holding her phone in my hands. And suddenly I remembered, last month I found a men's cologne in our car. At the time I thought it might be mine. But now I knew it wasn't. Several times she came home with light bruises on her neck. I asked what they were. She laughed and said, "Oh, I don't know. She must have hit herself somewhere." I believed her. I was an idiot. Last week I saw her in the parking lot outside the office. I wanted to give her a lift. But when I got closer, she jumped into someone else's car. I didn't see who it was. I didn't ask. I just didn't want to know the truth. But now everything was coming together in one picture. And this picture was terrible. What to do? I couldn't sit idly by any longer. I had to find out the whole truth. I could just ask her, but I knew she would lie. I could make a scandal. But then I would have given her the opportunity to come up with an excuse. No, I should have acted more wisely. I should have collected evidence. I should have made sure she couldn't get away with it. The final decision. I knew I couldn't find the truth myself. So I decided to do the only right thing. I picked up the phone and dialed the number. Good afternoon. Is this a detective agency? Yes, we're listening. I need you to keep an eye on my wife. If she's lying, I'll know. And if she's really sleeping with my father, this will be the beginning of her end. I never thought the day would come when I would hire a private investigator to track down my own wife. But when suspicions started to creep into my head, they haunt me. You wake up with it. You fall asleep with it. And even in your quietest moments, it whispers to you. She's lying to you. She's cheating on you. I knew that you couldn't just get the truth, so I had to do it right. My first meeting with a detective. I was met by a man in his 40s, confident, calm, with the look of someone who had seen a lot of dirt in this world. Do you need to gather information? He asked calmly. I need to find out if my wife is cheating on me. Do you have any suspicions? I briefly told him about the call, the message, her strange behavior. He listened silently. Then he took out his notebook and made a few notes. I can take on the case. I'll give you a full report in a week. I need to know everything. With whom? When? Where? For how long? He smiled. Believe me, if she's cheating on you, I'll prove it. I clenched my fists. Prove it, waiting for the truth. The next few days were unbearable. I lived in a state of waiting. Every time Sophia left the house, I wanted to follow her, but I couldn't show anything. I acted as if everything was normal. I kissed her goodbye, made her breakfast, talked as usual, and inside me, everything was burning. I no longer looked at her as my wife. I looked at her as a mystery that was about to be solved. Detective's report. A week later, I receive a message. Meeting today. There is important information. I arrived at the detective's office at exactly 6 o'clock in the evening. He was already waiting for me. In front of him was an envelope with photographs. I think this is what you need. I took it and opened it, and the world around me disappeared. In the first photo, Sophia was in my father's arms. In the second, they were kissing in his car. In the third, they were entering a hotel room. I felt a wave of rage wash over me. How long has this been going on? I asked, trying to control my voice. At least a year. But judging by their behavior, it could be much longer. I looked at the photos again. My father, my wife, together, in the hotel. I didn't know what I felt more, disgust or hatred. What next? I took the envelope, thanked her, and left. I tried not to break anything all the way home in anger. I couldn't believe this was happening right in front of me. I trusted her. I never thought my own father could do something like this. But now I knew the truth, and now I had to decide what to do next. I could have made a fuss right now, but that would have been too easy. I wanted more. I wanted them to pay, and they would pay. Full price. I sat in the car, clutching the envelope of evidence. My brain refused to accept what I was seeing. I tried to find some rational explanation. Maybe this was a joke. Maybe they were meeting for some other reason. Maybe this was a misunderstanding. But no, I saw them kissing, hugging, as they entered the hotel room. I felt myself starting to feel sick. I knew that Sophia could have cheated on me. But what about my father? It was a blow that shattered me completely. Years of lies. I began to remember our entire lives. 12 years of marriage. We bought a house together, raised a son, traveled, laughed, and all this time she was sleeping with my father? She would come home, look me in the eye, and tell me she loved me. She would cook dinner for me, sleep next to me, raise our child, and date him at the same time? I couldn't accept it. Memories that now seem like lies. I remembered how I had once told her, I would never betray you. And she smiled and replied, Me too, my love. I remembered how on our wedding anniversary, she gave me a watch and said, "I can't imagine life without you." A lie. Everything she said to me, every "I love you," every touch, it was all a lie. I no longer knew this woman. Father, the person who was supposed to be an example for me. But that wasn't even what hurt the most. What destroyed me most was what my father did. We were never very close. He wasn't a good husband to my mother, but I never thought he could do this to me. I grew up thinking he was selfish, that he never cared about his family, that he only loved himself. But I didn't expect him to betray me like this. It wasn't even about Sophia. It was about me. He took everything from me. And even if he was never a good father, he had at least a little respect for me. But I was wrong. He held nothing sacred. What should I do? I got home late at night. Sophia was already asleep. I quietly walked into the bedroom. I stood by the bed and looked at her. I was looking at the woman I once loved, the woman I had dedicated my life to, the woman who was supposed to be my partner. But now all I saw in her was lies, betrayal, and meanness. I could wake her up, create a scandal, throw these photos in her face. But what would that change? She would deny it. She would cry, maybe even apologize. But it wouldn't change anything. I didn't want to hear any more of her excuses. I didn't want to see her lying face anymore. I wanted to make her pay. I decided that just walking away was too easy for her. Did she think she had won? That everything would remain a secret? That I would just throw up my hands and forgive? No, I was not the kind of man to be destroyed so easily. I will destroy her life. I will destroy his life. And they will regret ever having crossed my path. I couldn't just let them win. Not after everything I'd seen. I could have made a big fuss. Throw Sophia out of the house. Punch my father in the face and never speak to him again. But that would have been too easy. Too fast. I wanted something more. I wanted them to destroy themselves. To lose everything slowly and painfully. I had to act coolly, methodically, and intelligently. The first step was to gather evidence. The photos the detective had taken were good, but I needed hard evidence. I ordered hidden cameras. I set them up in the living room, the kitchen, and even our bedroom. I had to catch them red-handed. I didn't just want to know the truth. I wanted a weapon to use against them. The second step is a financial blow. Sophia never worked seriously. She had her own marketing agency, but I brought most of the income into the family. The house was registered in my name. The bank accounts were in my name. Did she think she would get half after the divorce? She had no idea that I was already preparing to bankrupt her. I met with a lawyer and explained the situation. "We can't give her a chance to sue you for money," he said. "That's why I'm here," I replied. We changed financial accounts, transferred assets. I did everything so that if she wanted to leave, she would leave empty-handed. The third step is her reputation. Sophia loved to play the role of the perfect wife, mother, and businesswoman. She had good connections, a reputation among clients and friends. But what would happen if they all found out who she really was? I already knew what to do. I would make her reputation forever ruined. I started by gathering her correspondence. Using a special program, I restored the deleted messages on her phone. And what I found there, I didn't just find correspondence with my father. I found explicit photos, videos, conversations they had behind my back. She made jokes about me. They made fun of me. "He's so stupid. He doesn't even know," she wrote. "You're better than him at everything," she replied to her father. "I'm just waiting for the right moment to get rid of him," he wrote. I stopped. I reread it again. Get rid of him? What did that mean? They weren't just betraying me. They were planning to destroy me completely. And that was the final straw, the final solution. I didn't just want to expose them anymore. I wanted to wipe their lives out. Did they think I was weak? That I would just accept it? That I wouldn't see the obvious? I was patient. But now I was in control. And they didn't even know that I had already started a game they would lose. I was no longer the man they knew me to be. I was no longer their victim. They thought they were in control. They thought they were leaving me in the dark while they made their plans. But now I was playing this game. And the first step of my plan was to make them feel safe. I start the game. When I woke up in the morning, Sophia was still asleep. I made breakfast as usual. The aroma of coffee filled the kitchen. When she came in, I smiled and handed her a cup. "You're in a great mood today," she said, slightly surprised. "I just realized I want to spend more time with you," I replied. I looked at her as if everything was perfect, as if I didn't know she was cheating on me with my father, as if I didn't have the envelope with the evidence. She relaxed. I could see it in her eyes. She thought she had won. The trust that no longer existed. I started spending more time at home. I asked her how her day was. I kissed her on the cheek before she went to bed. I created the illusion of trust. I saw how she felt more and more confident, how she thought I didn't suspect anything. And what did I do next? I started watching her cheating schedule. I knew she wouldn't stop seeing my father. I just had to figure out her schedule. Did she say she was late for work? I checked her office. She wasn't there. Did she say she was going to a business meeting? I already knew where she was really spending all this time. She didn't even suspect that I was monitoring her every move. She was lying to my face, and I pretended to believe her. But in reality, I was preparing a blow that would make her regret everything. My father suspected nothing. I hadn't seen him for almost 2 weeks. He must have been afraid to show himself to me. And he was right. But one day, he called me himself. "Hello, son. How are you?" His voice sounded familiar. No fear, no remorse, no shame. I clenched my fists. "It's okay, Dad. It's been a while since I've seen you. We should have a drink together sometime," he said. I almost laughed. I don't know what struck me more, the fact that he betrayed me, or the fact that he didn't even regret it. "Yes," I replied. "Let's meet up." He didn't know that this meeting would be the beginning of his end. I make Sophia make an even bigger mistake. The next day, I made another move. I told her, "Let's go to a resort for the weekend, just the two of us." She smiled nervously. "Oh, honey, there's so much to do right now, I can't." I knew why. She was supposed to meet him. She came up with an excuse. She didn't even suspect that it was a test. She failed it. She didn't know that I had already prepared a trap for her. What next? I had everything I needed. I had photos, videos, correspondence. I knew every single lie she made. I had all the evidence in one folder. And now I knew it was time to make the final blow. Their lives will never be the same again. I thought betrayal was the worst thing that could happen, that nothing would surprise me anymore. I was wrong. What I learned next turned everything upside down. They weren't just sleeping behind my back. They were planning to destroy me completely. The conversation recording that changed everything. I already had cameras and microphones in our house. I recorded everything that happened when I wasn't around. That evening, Sophia said again that she was going to a friend's house. I knew it was a lie. I turned on the recording from the camera in the living room. My father's voice sounded calm, cold. "Does he suspect anything?" "No," she replied, laughing. "He doesn't even know we're together." "Are you sure he's not trying to dig up something?" "Trust me, Alex is the stupidest man in the world. He always believes in the best." I felt my fists clench. But the next words were even worse. "We don't have much time," my father said. "He shouldn't have time to file for divorce first." "I know," she replied. "You need to convince him that you still have a chance," he continued. "And then, when he trusts you, we'll make sure he's left with nothing." I froze. "He's not stupid enough to give you everything for nothing, is he?" my father asked. Sophia laughed. "Alex loves me. He believes me. I'll just say that I want to start over. He'll believe me and maybe even transfer some of the property to me. The main thing is to file a lawsuit in time to win the court," he said. "If he finds out the truth before then, you'll lose everything." She sighed. "He trusts me, and I'm the best actress he's ever known." At that moment, I felt something inside me break. I knew she was lying, but I didn't know she wanted to destroy me. They wanted to rob me of every last cent. I wasn't just a man who had been betrayed. I had become an obstacle for them. They wanted to exploit my trust, take my money and property, take my son, make me have nothing. I was no longer just a deceived man. I was a target, and if they wanted to destroy me, I had to strike first. I'm starting the end game. I pulled out my phone and made a few calls. I wasn't just collecting evidence anymore. I was preparing a full-scale strike that would leave them without a chance. I will not let them win. I will not let them take what is mine. I will make them pay for every lie, every manipulation, every meanness. This was not just revenge. This was war. And I will not lose. They thought I was unsuspecting. They thought I was just living my life while they were plotting against me. I didn't just know the truth. I was already preparing to strike the final blow. But to do that, I had to make them believe they were in control. I had to play the perfect fool. I'm changing tactics. The next morning I acted differently. I no longer looked depressed, nervous, or suspicious. I was back to being the man she remembered. Smiling, caring, kind. I had a romantic dinner. Bought her flowers. As we sat at the table, she couldn't help but say, "What happened? What do you mean? You've changed. You've become the same as before." I took her hand and said, "I realized I wanted to give our marriage another chance." I could see it in her eyes. The relief. She believed her plan had worked. I'm filing for divorce. I already knew she would try to dump me at the worst possible moment, when she was ready to take everything away. But this time I was going to make the first move. I met with a lawyer. "I want to file for divorce," I said. "Are you sure?" he asked. I smiled. More than ever. I had drafted the papers so that she would be left with nothing. No assets. No money. I knew she had no chance of winning. She thought that if she filed for divorce first, I wouldn't be ready. But this time I was in control. My father falls into a trap. The next day I met him. I was smiling, friendly. "Long time no see, Dad." "Yes, son, long time," he replied, trying to look casual. He didn't know that I knew. He thought he had managed to trick me. "I thought maybe Sophia and I could go on vacation and start over," I said. I saw him tense up for a second. He was afraid I would get close to Sophia again. He thought it would ruin their plan. "That's a good idea, son," he said, hiding his nervousness. He didn't suspect anything. Sophia makes her fatal mistake. A few days later, I received a message from her. "Honey, I've been thinking and I understand. I don't want to lose you. Let's try again." I almost laughed. I knew she was lying. I knew she was just playing her game. And I gave her a chance to continue lying. "I'm glad to hear that," I replied. "I don't want to lose you either." I made her believe that she had won, that everything was going according to her plan, that I had become that naive man who could be used again. But she had no idea that the next day I would make my final move. I woke up earlier than usual. Sophia was still asleep, wrapped in a blanket, looking like an innocent woman. But I knew the truth. She thought I was a lovesick fool who believed in her again. She thought she had one more step to take, and she would get everything she wanted. She had no idea that her end was near. I make the first move. I took the documents that I had prepared long ago, a divorce petition. The traitor would get nothing. No house. No money. I already had evidence of her betrayal. In court, they would mean only one thing. She was guilty. I wanted to see her reaction. I wanted to savor the moment. The conversation that changed everything. I placed the documents on the table in front of her as she drank her morning coffee. She looked at them and froze. "What is this?" I sat down opposite. "It's a divorce." Her face turned pale. "But we said we want to start over." I smiled. "That's what you thought." She didn't understand. She couldn't believe her plan was falling apart right now. "Why are you doing this?" She finally asked. I didn't answer right away. I wanted her to feel scared. "Because you don't mean anything to me anymore," I finally said. "Now sign the documents." Her panic. She grabbed the documents and began to look through them. I saw her fingers shaking. She thought she could use me, and now she herself was the victim. "I won't sign this," she whispered. I leaned forward and said quietly, "You will sign. Because if you don't sign, I will make sure everyone knows who you really are." She looked up at me. "What?" I opened my laptop and turned on the video. She and my father appeared on the screen. Hugs, kisses, a hotel room. She flinched sharply. You You were following me. I knew everything before you started your performance. I said calmly, You can't do this. I can, and I will. I unblocked my phone and opened a chat with her colleagues. What do you think will happen to your career when everyone sees this video? I saw the panic in her eyes. Now she understood. I was no longer her plaything. If you sign the papers today, this video will stay between us. I continued. And if not, then everyone will know the truth. The final blow. She gasped for air like a fish. This is illegal. No, illegal is what you've been doing to me all these years. She had no choice. Her plan was falling apart. She slowly picked up the pen. I watched her sign the papers. Her hand was shaking, but now she couldn't do anything. I had won. She had lost everything. And that wasn't the end of it. What next? Now all that was left was to deal the final blow to my father. I knew he didn't even suspect that I was ready to destroy him. Sophia had already lost. She signed the papers, lost everything. But there was another player in this game. My father. He was a real manipulator. All his life, he only thought about himself. He believed that he could use people, betray them, and always get away with it. I couldn't let him win. He had to pay. His life before the revelation. After I learned the whole truth, I began to follow him more closely. He was not just an ordinary man who slept with his own son's wife. He was a liar, an egoist, a manipulator. He had a good reputation in the business environment. He was respected by his friends, colleagues, partners. He always played the role of a successful man who controlled the situation. But I was going to destroy this illusion. I had to make sure everyone saw who he really was. I was setting a trap. I knew he was a frequent attendee of business meetings. He loved to speak in front of people, give advice, and appear successful. That was where I was going to hit him. I had arranged with his partner. He had been invited to speak at a conference in front of 100 people. I knew he would be there. I knew he would come with a smile on his face, confident in himself. But he had no idea that this was where I would make the public revelation, the moment that changed everything. I had arrived at the conference early. I had everything ready. He walked onto the stage, a man in an expensive suit who thought he knew how to manage people. Little did he know that his life would be ruined forever. I waited for the moment when he started talking about values, honesty, and loyalty. And then I turned on the projector. Photos appeared on the big screen. Him in my wife's arms. His kisses with her. They are together in a hotel room. At first, there was silence in the hall. And then, shocked voices, surprised exclamations. I stood up and said loudly, "Here he is, your ideal man. The man who teaches you about honesty." But he slept with his own son's wife. He froze in place. His confidence disappeared. He was confused, scared. This is not true, he muttered, but no one believed him. His friends, partners, colleagues, they all saw his true face. His world is crumbling. His business partners refused to do business with him. His wife filed for divorce. His reputation was ruined. He called me several times, but I didn't answer. He had no right to be a part of my life anymore. He got what he deserved. What next? I won, but that was just the beginning. The next step was to take from Sophia what she wanted to take from me. My son. I had already destroyed her reputation. I had left her penniless, homeless, and unsupported. But there was one more thing I had to do. She wanted to take my son away from me. She thought that after the divorce, she would remain the main thing in his life. But I could not allow a traitor to raise my child. I had to make sure that she lost everything for good. My lawyer was ready to fight. I met with my lawyer, Michael. "Are you sure you want full custody?" he asked. 100%. I showed him all the evidence. Photos of her cheating. Correspondence where she mocked me. Recordings of conversations where she and my father planned to take everything away from me. Financial documents that proved that she would not be able to support her son. Michael looked through everything and smiled. She lost before we even got to court. Sophia makes a pitiful attempt to fight. On the day of the trial, she brought the lawyer she could afford. He was a cheap lawyer who didn't even know what to expect. Sophia tried to play the role of a caring mother. Your Honor, she began, my husband is manipulating the facts. Yes, we had problems, but that doesn't make me a bad mother. I didn't even try to listen to her. When she finished her performance, my lawyer stood up and tore her to pieces. Your Honor, let me present evidence that demonstrates the defendant's immoral behavior. We played the recordings of her conversations with my father. Her own voice echoed in the courtroom. I'm just waiting for the moment to take everything away from him. Alex is stupid. He'll never guess. If we do it right, I'll get his house and his son. I saw her turn pale. This was her final blow. She couldn't lie anymore. The verdict of court, I won. The judge looked at her with a long, cold look based on the evidence presented. The court orders full custody of the child to the father. I heard Sophia scream, "No, this is not fair. I am his mother." The judge did not change his decision. You lost that right the moment you decided to use your family for personal gain. She burst into tears. But I didn't care anymore. I won. Sophia's financial collapse. After the trial, she had more news. She was in debt, homeless, jobless. Her lover, my father, couldn't help her because after the public exposure, he had lost almost everything. She was left on the street, penniless, and now no one wanted to deal with her. I won. She lost everything. She destroyed our family. But now I had destroyed her life. What next? Now I had one last thing left to do. I had to talk to my son. I had to explain everything to him. He had to know the truth. I sat in the living room, looking at the photos. They were of me, Sophia, and Evan, smiling like the perfect family. But now I knew it was all a lie. Sophia had lost everything. So had my father. I had won. But there was one other person I had to explain everything to. My son. I knew I couldn't just tell him, "Your mother betrayed you. She's been lying to me all these years." But he had to know the truth. He had to know who his mother really was. Evan understood more than I thought. I called him to a conversation. He sat down across from me, a little nervous. "Dad, what's wrong?" I took a deep breath. "We need to talk about Mom." He jerked his head up. "She did something bad, didn't she?" I was surprised. "Why do you think that?" "I've seen the way you've looked at her these past few months. How serious you become." I could tell he felt everything. Children always feel when something is wrong. "Evan," I said finally, "your mother betrayed our family." He looked at me with understanding. "I knew she didn't love you anymore," he said quietly. But I didn't want to believe it. I felt my heart tighten. My son wasn't a little kid. He understood more than I thought. He asked the most important question. "Dad, will you forgive her?" I looked him straight in the eye. "No." He nodded. "Then I won't either." I saw the last trace of naivety disappear from his eyes. His mother had not only betrayed me, she had betrayed him too. And he knew it. I make him a promise. I put my hand on his shoulder. "Son, I know it's hard for you right now. She won't be with us anymore?" "No." "And we'll be together?" "Yes." He paused. And then he said something that made me hold my breath. "You're the only real father I have." He didn't ask about his mother anymore. He didn't want to see her anymore. And I knew I had done the right thing. I had saved him from a woman who wasn't worthy of being his mother. What next? We never looked back. I never thought about Sophia again. I no longer thought about my father. I had a new life, and it was much better than I could have imagined. I thought that after everything that had happened, I would never see him again, that he would disappear from my life just like Sophia. But life always gives me a chance to see the final picture. I wasn't looking to meet him, but one evening I got a call. It was his voice, quiet, broken. "Alex," he said, "we need to talk." I could have just hung up. I could have ignored him, just as he had ignored me all my life. But I decided to give him one last chance to see what he had lost. I saw him as I had never seen him before. He was sitting in a cheap bar. He used to wear expensive suits. He looked impeccable. Now a tired, gray-haired man in an old jacket sat in front of me. His eyes were empty. His look was broken. I sat across from him. "Tell me," I said coldly. He took a sip of whiskey. I know you hate me. I was silent. I know what I did, and I'm sorry. I smiled. Are you sorry because you lost everything? Or are you sorry because you realized what a vile person you were? He looked away. I just want to say that I didn't expect this ending. I laughed. And what ending did you want, Dad? Did you want me to silently give you my wife? My home? My son? Did you want me to just disappear? He had no answer. I thought that she loved me, he finally muttered. I looked at him with contempt. She used you, just like you've used others your whole life. His lips pursed. He knew I was right. His life after my blow. His wife filed for divorce. His business partners refused to work with him. His reputation was ruined. He was left with nothing. So what now? I asked. He shrugged. I live in a cheap motel. Sometimes I work temporary jobs. What's life like without money, without influence, without friends? He looked up at me. This is not what I expected. I leaned closer. Congratulations. This is your new life. His hands balled into fists. You got everything you wanted, right? I nodded. Yes, I won, and you lost. He lowered his head. I saw a broken man before me, a man who thought he could ruin my life. But instead, I ruined his. He had lost more than I had, and now he knew it was forever. I stood up. Goodbye, Dad. We will never see each other again. I left, leaving him alone with his mistakes. He had received the worst punishment of all, a life he had ruined for himself. And that was a just ending for him. What next? I don't look back anymore. I don't think about Sophia anymore. I don't think about my father anymore. I have a new life ahead of me, and it will be better than ever. I no longer had any reason to look back. Everything that was poison in my life was in the past. Sophia lost everything. My father was left with nothing. They got what they deserved. And I was reborn. I was the one who came out of this ordeal stronger than ever. Life after everything. When you go through such hell, you start to appreciate the real. I became closer to my son. I started to build a new life. Without lies, without manipulation, without falsehood. I knew that it would still be difficult. I knew that everything would not be forgotten in one day. But I no longer felt pain. I felt freedom. The last meeting with Sophia. I saw her only once after the trial. She was waiting for me outside my office. When I approached, she spoke first. Are you happy? I looked at her. Standing before me was not the woman I had once lived with. Now she was a shadow of herself. Yes, I answered simply. She lowered her eyes. I made a mistake, she said. I laughed. That is the biggest understatement in the world. She sighed. Will you ever forgive me? I looked into her eyes. No, I no longer felt anything for her. She was nothing to me, and she knew it. I turned and walked away. She was left standing there, alone, broken, with a life she had ruined for herself. The final step to a new life. I was no longer holding on to the past. I no longer felt anger, pain, or hatred. I simply moved forward. I knew that a real life was ahead of me. No betrayal, no manipulation, no people who want to use me. I won, and that was my final victory. The end. Please subscribe to our channel Stellar Stories. We have new amazing stories coming out every day. Thank you.